Change comes from voting for the candidates you believe in, not for voting against the people you don't. Yeah, let's talk about that.
Instead of focusing on winning arguments, we're teaching the basic fundamentals of sales and marketing and how we can use them to win in the world of politics, teaching you how to meet people where they're at on the issues they care about. Welcome to the Brian Nichols Show.
Well, hey there, folks. Brian Nichols here on the Brian Nichols Show, and thank you for joining us on, of course, another fun-filled episode. I am, as always, your humble host, joining you live from our Cardio Miracle Studios here in lovely Eastern Indiana. Cardio Miracle, folks. I've been touting Cardio Miracle now for just about half a year, and I got to say, yes, the Cardio Miracle difference is real. So if you want to experience the Cardio Miracle difference for yourself, like yours truly, and what is that? Better sleep, better workouts, better pump at the gym, plus a better healthy heart. Yes, super important, especially as you get older in age. So check out Cardio Miracle. It's designed with nitric oxide to help improve your heart health. And folks, you have nothing to lose because there's quite literally a 100% money back guarantee. So join the tens of thousands of other folks who have started to revitalize their heart health today. Head to the show notes here in the video or to briannicholsshow.com/heart. Join the tens of thousands of others who are experiencing the Cardio Miracle difference today. I guarantee your heart will thank you. One more time, cardiomiracle.com. All right, folks, let's go ahead and talk about, yes, voting for candidates you actually believe in, not the ones you don't. If you want to go ahead and vote for a candidate you believe in out in West Virginia, today's candidate might be the one that maybe piques your interest. Joining us today, running for Libertarian Governor of West Virginia, Erika Kolenich. Welcome to the Brian Nichols Show. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Doing great. Oh, Erika, thank you for joining us. And yes, thank you for joining us on New Year's here as we're celebrating 2024. We've kicked into a brand new year. And Erika, with that, it's an election year. So folks are naturally preparing to head to the polls this November. Feels weird to say, but let's go ahead. Paint the picture, Erika. You're running for governor of West Virginia as a big L Libertarian. I'm sure folks want to hear more about that. But first, do us a favor. Introduce yourself. And also, why a Libertarian? Why are you running for office with that big L next to your name?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, thank you for having me on. I'm running for governor here in West Virginia, and I'm really running for a lot of reasons. The biggest reason is in West Virginia, we, like a lot of states, but even more so, do the same tired old things over and over and over again. And what we do in West Virginia is we vote for the same tired old people with the same tired old ideas. And in West Virginia, people have themselves convinced that Republicans are the only option and that Republicans and their primary are going to decide the election. And it's the same old recycled Republicans, literally the same old recycled Republicans. They're the son of the senator and the son of the U.S. Congresswoman. It's literally the same recycled thing. So I want to bring something different, new, and exciting to West Virginia. So I'm running for governor, and I'm running for governor as a libertarian because I believe in libertarian ideas. I believe in libertarian and freedom and libertarian solutions. And secondarily, the only opportunity we have for ballot access in West Virginia is the governor's race. So it's a very important race for big L libertarians in West Virginia. It's the only opportunity we have for people who want to run down ballot type races, run for local races in their communities. So the governor's race is very, very important as our ballot access race in West Virginia.
Gotcha. So, Erika, now this isn't to pick on you, but I heard a lot about why it's important for libertarians that you're running for office. But let's talk about those West Virginia Knights. Is that the right terminology? I don't know. We're gonna go with it today. Let's look at those folks, those voters in West Virginia. Besides getting somebody different than a tried and true Republican, what's in it for them? Why would they want to consider a libertarian for governor versus what you've identified as the status quo?
Well, because the Republicans really aren't giving what they sell. They aren't giving any real change. They're not really giving any tax changes here in West Virginia. They're not really giving any new and different ideas, and they're not really moving the needle toward any type of conservative values or anything different and new in West Virginia. They make a lot of promises and then they deliver nothing. They deliver no real new tax breaks. They deliver no real new economic growth. They didn't deliver no real new anything. And so I think that West Virginia needs something different. We continue to be at the bottom of every bad list that you can imagine. And we're not moving. We're not moving beyond the bottom 5 of any of those lists. And it's time for something different. And the Republicans and certainly the Democrats aren't giving us anything different in West Virginia. So we need new ideas.
Well, let's dig into that then. The voters of West Virginia aren't getting anything different. What would look different with a big L libertarian running for office and fingers crossed winning the governorship?
Sure. Well, I think the first thing is here in West Virginia, we have a pretty big crisis in our jails. There's actually been a state of emergency that's been declared. I believe it's been in excess of the past 18 months in our jails in West Virginia. And that has been due to shortage of Department of Correction workers. We actually have our National Guardsmen in our jails working to fill roles. And part of that is because we're incarcerating people that we shouldn't incarcerate. And when you talk to the folks who are in office, the Republicans and the Democrats here in West Virginia, the only thing they talk about is how can we pay people at the Department of Corrections more? How can we add to their salaries? How can we spend more taxpayers' money increasing the budgets at the Department of Corrections to take care of that problem? And that's not working. We've been trying it for the past several years and it's not working at all. And no one ever talks about any new ideas. So what we need to do is look at what's the problem that's causing the understaffing issue, right? And it's overpopulation of the jails. So my thought is we get some folks out of the jails who don't need to be there. So let's take people who were incarcerated because they're addicts. Let's take people who were incarcerated because they committed things that shouldn't be crimes in the first place, like drug possession, drug use. Let's let those folks out. Let's let them fill the jobs shortage. In West Virginia, we only have about 40% of the folks who live in West Virginia who are involved in the workforce, which is causing an economic crisis. Businesses that want to be in West Virginia have a hard time filling jobs. Let's let those folks out so they can fill the jobs, kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Then you don't need as many people working in the jails, and we've solved that problem. There's a massive corruption in our Department of Corrections, which is a major, major issue. There are lots of people, lots of lawsuits right now in the Regional Jail Authority. There are people who are dying, inmates who are being mistreated. The governor did do something great recently, which is he fired some folks. But one of the things that he's not doing is getting rid of that problem from the top up. And that's what I want to do, is get rid of that problem from the top up. So there's a major criminal justice reform that needs to happen in West Virginia that's not happening right now.
Gotcha. And I heard you hint at the economic implications as well. So I guess that would lead me to believe, as you were kind of outlining here, with only 40% of folks actually working in West Virginia, it sounds like there may be some red tape and some roadblocks. I'm guessing bureaucracies within the state itself, I'm sure, are playing a very significant role in that. Erika, talk to us about what the economic plans for your campaign would look like.
Sure. Right now, our playbook has always been, we offer here in West Virginia sweetheart deals to large out-of-state corporations to come to West Virginia and locate here. And that never seems to work out. There's a lot of false promises that are made to West Virginians that the Republicans and the Democrats never fulfill and never deliver on. What I want to do is simply make it easier for the businesses who are already here to operate. We're a very, very, very heavily regulated state. We do silly things in West Virginia. For example, if you own a convenience store in West Virginia, you are told from which alcohol distributor you are permitted to buy your beer. Meaning, if you're headed into a Labor Day weekend and your beer supply is really, really low, you can't just call around to all the wholesalers that have beer and say, hey, who has drivers available? Who can fill my stock? You have contracts, and the state of West Virginia dictates who you can buy from. So we do things that really handcuff businesses in West Virginia and make it as difficult as possible for them to operate. You have to have a certificate of need in West Virginia to operate a trash company, meaning if you want to drive around as a guy with a pickup truck and haul away people's trash, you have to demonstrate to the state of West Virginia that there's a need in the state for you to do so. So we make it impossible for businesses to operate. So my plan for economic growth in West Virginia simply involves just tearing down all the walls that the government has put up to make it hard for businesses to operate. Bust down those walls and make it easier.
You talked about individual liberties on your website, and obviously during COVID in the past 3 years, 4 years now, my goodness, time goes fast. We all experienced firsthand the implications of draconian COVID lockdown measures. Now, I experienced that in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, before I moved to Indiana. Other folks, as I moved out here to Indiana, were like, you have a lockdown going on in Philadelphia? What? So I'm guessing that's a part of these individual liberties you've outlined there, Erika. But what else have you identified as some areas touching on the individual liberties, area that you want to focus more upon with your campaign?
Well, I think that a lot of people, when they think about liberty, they think about just themselves. And one of the goals of my campaign, campaigns can be effective for lots of reasons, right? You can win, you can maintain ballot access, and ultimately my goal is to win. But if something were to happen and I don't win, one of the goals that I really have is just educating people about liberty and educating people that liberty doesn't just mean liberty for you, that you have to be comfortable. If you're going to preach about the idea of liberty, you have to be comfortable understanding that means the idea of liberty for everyone. Meaning don't just not tread on me, don't tread on anyone. And one of the goals of my campaign is really getting out there in the community and making people understand that liberty means liberty in every aspect of everyone's life, meaning the government should never be telling you what to do in any situation as long as you're not harming someone else's property or interfering with someone's body. And I think that that's a really, abstract principle for a lot of people to understand. And one of the goals of my campaign is really getting out and making sure that people understand that.
So let's maybe dig into that one a little bit in more detail, because this has been an area, not necessarily of contention, but rather an area of maybe some confusion that we've had here on the show. And really the lines here are quite gray. And Erika, I would love to hear, as you're kind of, making your case to a much more red West Virginia, what that line is. And that line we're referring to here is when we're talking about what harm constitutes as, for example. Now that this issue has become, very, very topical, obviously, with the past year, but, drag queen story hours, for example, right? Yeah. There is no immediate harm being done on children. However, one could argue, and I think very much with the data on their side, that the perversion of the basic understandings of normalcy does impact children and the future generations very much so in a negative standpoint, with not only confusing kids, but then leading to them questioning their own gender, their own sexuality, which, for a child, as a dad with a young daughter, I say absolutely not. So for me, Erika, I'm a little bit in the gray area myself. Where is this line of harm? And frankly, how does a populace, now you mentioned the word government in terms of reacting to that harm, and I guess we have to figure out what's the best way to deal with something like this when it is in such a gray area.
Sure. Well, so there's a lot of aspects to what you're talking about, right? So if you're talking about, drag queen story hour, I suppose first of all we have to decide where is it happening, right? Is it happening in a government building or is it happening at a private restaurant? So if it's happening at a private restaurant, I think we have to treat it just like we would a church. If a parent decides they want to take their child to a drag queen story hour, they should have just as much right to do that as a parent who takes their child to church. And, maybe you agree with that. Maybe you disagree with that. There's going to be people who disagree with parents taking their child to a Catholic church. There are going to be people who disagree with parents taking their children to a pagan church. But the fact of the matter is, that's a parent's right to take their child where they want to take their children. Parents should be able to take their children to a drag queen story hour if it's at a private place, a restaurant, a place where they serve brunch. Certainly, the question is there a time when it crosses over from, are they reading fairy tales or are they reading something that crosses the line into something of a sexual nature, I guess. If it crosses the line of a sexual nature, then there are laws against that, right? But if it
Erika,
is simply
really quick though, and I guess this is just me being an old fuddy-duddy here, but
yeah,
I mean, isn't it by the very nature of a drag queen, it's a grown adult dressing sexually, therefore the very act of them reading the book to a child by its nature is a sexual, not necessarily act, but it's definitely sexual in tone.
Oh, I don't think so. I've seen
No?
drag queens. It depends on how the drag queen's dressed up. I've seen drag queens dressed in prom gowns with hair done. There's nothing sexual about it. It's just somebody dressed up. It would depend on how they were dressed up.
Let me just challenge that though, because
Sure.
they're dressing up in the opposite sex. So I'm going by the very definition of sex, right? It is sexual in a biological sense that the clothing that they are portraying themselves in is predominantly, no, in this case, is 1000% in a manner to show the opposite of their biological sex. So
Sure.
it might not be air quote sexy or sexualized clothing. However, the nature in the cross-dressing itself is sexual in its undertone.
Sure. And I guess I should have used the word pornographic. It's not pornographic, right? It doesn't cross that level into being something that if you showed a child and it was someone who was biologically that gender, it would be inappropriate. So it's not something where somebody is in a state of declothedness or there's a sexual act. And that's what I meant. There are certain things that you can't show a child or it becomes a crime. In other words, pornographic material. So until it crosses the line of pornographic material, I think that's the parent's choice. And it's the parent's choice just as much as taking the child to church. And I understand there are some people that disagree with that, but that's what I think individual liberties are. I think once we start interfering with parents' abilities to do that, then we have to start saying, well, maybe they shouldn't be taking them to this church because that might interfere with their, ability to, make sound decisions about what religion they want to be. I just think it's a dangerous line to start to cross. And unless they're doing something criminal, it really has to be the parent's job to decide.
Gotcha. Understand. I don't want to beat a dead horse on this topic,
Sure.
but this has definitely been an area that now let me rewind a little bit before I go down this rabbit hole. As the goal of this show, it is to help libertarians, both big L and small L, effectively sell and market our ideas, message our ideas, not to other libertarians, but to non-libertarians. Because frankly, in order to grow the movement, that's our not just our goal, that's our requirement. We have an obligation to be able to do that if we expect to see anything from an actual growth standpoint. So I guess my looking at this issue, libertarians are right in the argument of government out of people's lives. Now, as a former Republican and someone who still has quite a few associations and relationships with people who would still identify as a big R Republican, I just know that hearing the idea of comparing Drag Queen Story Hour with bringing a kid to church is going to just make people's brains blow up, right? And I think it's because there has been such a shift in the Overton window, Erika. And I'd love to hear your perspective on this, because the context in terms of what was considered to be acceptable behavior back, let's not even go back to like the straw man 50, the 50s mentality, 60s mentality. Let's go back to like when I was a kid. Let's go to the 90s, right? The normal person from 1993 to 2023, that person is a bigot, a homophobe, a racist. You can call that person every name in the book. Not because I know who they are and what their actual beliefs are, but because they were a normal person in the 90s. And a normal person in the 90s had normal views towards biology, towards sex, towards what was considered to be acceptable and unacceptable behavior. Now, we all understand what good behavior is when we see it. And frankly, we all kind of know what bad behavior is when we see it. I guess I'm stuck on why is it that libertarians are finding it part of our messaging not to turn the conversation away from the drag queens, but rather ask the question, why does a drag queen need to be reading a storybook to a kid in the first place?
Sure. And I don't necessarily think, I guess to answer your question, I don't necessarily think a drag queen does need to be reading a storybook to a child. But my point is, if a drag queen, if a parent wants to take their kid there, that's none of my business. It's none of your business. It's none of this guy's business. It's just none of our business. Just like it's none of our business, what anybody else is doing with their kids, as long as it's not hurting their kid. So I guess, to answer your question, if we start digging into why does the drag queen have to be reading a storybook to a child, we start digging into why are these people making these choices, which, to be honest, is just none of our damn business. It's live and let live, right, man? Like that's, as a libertarian, what I believe. Live and let live. And it's none of my business why they're doing what they're doing. Do I have to like it? No. Do I have to accept it? No. Do I have to take my kid to the Drag Queen Story Hour? I don't.
No, that's fair. Absolutely fair. And frankly, Erika, that's the question that I'm asking you here on this show, because I can guarantee that when you go out into the public and you're talking to much more rock-ribbed Republicans out there, they're not going to be as nice in their responses, because for them, this is a very
agree.
Right. This is a very emotional issue.
It is. And the reason that I compare it to church is not because I think it's an apples to apples comparison. It's because I want them to understand. I want them to understand that the second that you start interfering with that parent's choice that they're making for that child, and you let the government start interfering with the choice that that parent is making for that child, and the tides flip, and one day those people, whoever they might be, are the elected people in power, you've now set a precedent where they can start interfering with the choices that you're making for your child. And those important choices that you think that you're making for your child might be where you're taking your child to church. So you just need to think about that.
Let me add this one little caveat to this. And this kind of goes to your role as you're running for governor of West Virginia, and that is much more in the ideas of federalism. Would it make sense for the citizens, the residents of West Virginia, to look at you and say, Erika, as Governor Erika, we don't want this. We do not want our kids being taught trans stuff by trans folks, all this kind of stuff. We don't want our kids confused, whether it's at school, and we don't want this done at a federal level. We just want this done at a West Virginia level. Or let's even take it a step further. If there was a locality in West Virginia who was like, you know what, we don't want this for here. What's the libertarian, I guess, perspective on that?
Oh, sure. I think you can vote with your feet. I think if there's a group of people who want to live in a community and they want to pass that, but I think it has to be done by community vote. I don't think it can be done by a governmental organization. So if you want to have a vote that you put on a ballot that members of the community vote on, not elected officials that are government officials, and they say, we, the members of this community, vote that these are the standards that we want to implement for this community, I think that that's completely fine.
There you go. Okay, cool. So I think that's a good middle ground then for some folks more on the right-hand side of the aisle. Now, how about this, Erika? We are unfortunately a little hard pressed for time, so we're going towards our final thoughts segment. And as we wrap things up here today, I would love just to kind of kick things off, and I'll turn things over to you. When we're talking about libertarians running for electoral office, right? We know, and trust me, we're approaching 800 episodes here of the show. So anybody who's listening knows that it's an uphill battle. It has been an uphill battle for 40, 50 years at this point, and it's going to continue to be an uphill battle, which is why we as libertarians have an obligation to run smarter, not harder, which means, as we preach here on the show consistently, religiously at this point, meet people where they're at on the issues they care about. And with that, make sure that not only are you addressing those issues, but you truly understand those issues. It goes to the why behind people buy, right? And we're talking about buying in this situation. It's a buying decision from a vote standpoint. Erika's not going out and trying to win people's hearts and minds over as a candidate, which granted, that might just be a nice, happy consequence as her, the result of her going out and trying to earn the vote. But that's what Erika's job is to earn the vote. So to you candidates out there who are running as big L libertarians, please know your role. Know that your job is not necessarily going out there to win hearts and minds, but rather to win those votes. Now, if you want to be a messenger, just know that your role as a messenger is going to be a little bit different than the role as a candidate. And with that, your goals are going to be different along the way. So I just want to make sure we're not you, Erika, but everybody listening who are candidates or activists know the difference. And I think actually we talked about this with Larry Sharp back a couple of months ago, where Larry, completely went through and articulated, I think it was 3 different versions of libertarians. You have the libertarian activist, the party leader, and then the candidate, right? So we need all 3 of those folks, but it comes down to, what's your strength? What are you good at? So I challenge you, members of the audience, find out what you're good at. And then with that, not saying this condescendingly, but know your lane, know your role. And with that, do as best as you can. That's my final thoughts for today, Erika. What do you have on your end?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. Second of all, for those of you who are listening, if you're in West Virginia, we can always use help. We can always use help in the Libertarian Party. So if you're listening to this and you're not involved in the Libertarian Party, you should be. You should go to lpwv.org and check us out. Come to meetings, join us, and get involved. We love help. And if you're listening to this and you would like to help with our campaign, you can go to my website, which is nowisthetimewv.com, and you can donate. You can find out more information about my campaign. You can join our journey.
Awesome. Erika, it has been an absolute pleasure. And yes, thank you for joining us on New Year's Day. Peek behind the curtain, folks. We are recording here on New Year's Day. So yes, thank you. Special thank you to Erika for joining us. And folks, if you got some value from today's episode, you know the drill. Go ahead and give it a share. When you do, please tag yours truly at B Nichols Liberty. Facebook and X.com is where you can find me. Erika, where can folks go ahead and find you?
It's nowisthetimewv.com.
Any social media links?
Oh, yes. I'm on Facebook at, I'm not sure the exact link, but if you look on Facebook at Erika Kolenich, you will find it. It's, my name is right there, but it's Kolenich.
Perfect. And folks who are listening to the audio version of the show, no worries. All these links are going to be in the show notes, or if you are watching the video of the show, over in the description as well. Thank you, Erika, for joining. It's been a great conversation. And folks, if you did, in fact, get some of that value beyond sharing the show, I'm going to go ahead and ask you to give us a 5-star rating and review. And when you do so, please let us know that you enjoyed today's episode with Erika. And yes, you love seeing the big L candidates running for elected office, because not only does that keep us in people's minds, but also it gives the voters a real third option, and not just a third option, but dare I say, a better option. Find us over on your favorite podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Music, or if you want to listen to us on the video version of the show, check out YouTube, Rumble, Ben Swan's Sovereign, spelled SOVREN, or we upload our entire episodes to x.com as well. And one final note is that if you are, in fact, enjoying the Brian Nichols Show and you want to support the show, well, please support our sponsors, because it is our sponsors who support the Brian Nichols Show that keep us turning the lights on and having amazing conversations with Erika. So whether it's Cardio Miracle, Ebles, Blood of Tyrants, or their awesome new energy tea, Liquid Freedom, BNC Technology Advisors, and more, please head to our sponsor page. Support the folks who support us here at the Brian Nichols Show. Every little bit definitely helps us more than you would know. So with that being said, thank you for joining us. And Brian Nichols signing off here on the Brian Nichols Show for Erika Kolenich. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Brian Nichols Show. Find more episodes at briannicholsshow.com.